So you're here because you want to cut through all the noise
Right.
and really get a handle on a complex situation.
Yeah, that's what we try to do here on the deep dive.
Exactly. We take this, like, huge stack of information, news stuff, court documents, transcripts, sometimes even less conventional take.
Try to pull out the really important bits for you.
And today, our deep dive mission is all about the Karen Reed case. It's incredibly divisive.
It really is. We're going to look into these allegations about potential judicial bias, examine what law enforcement did or allegedly did.
And even touch on some pretty surprising interpretations that have popped up.
Yeah, the sources are varied. The goal is really just to give you a clearer picture because there's so many conflicting views flying around.
And what makes this one so interesting, I think, is just the sheer number of questions that don't seem to have clear answers yet. Doubts about impartiality in the system itself, these claims of, like, hidden connections, maybe pulling strings.
And yeah, some truly unique theories that people are talking about.
We're going to try and unpack it all, make it informative, but hopefully not, overwhelming.
That
Okay.
sounds good. Let's get into it.
Right. Where should we start? Maybe with the judge.
Yeah, let's start there. The allegations around judicial bias, specifically Judge Beverly J. Cannon, there are a few things people point to.
Okay.
So one thing that gets mentioned is this historical link. Back to 1981, the Connolly bloodline, and also the fact that Judge Cannon's mother worked for the wife of the current DA, Michael Morrissey, at one point.
Oh, interesting. So these are like documented connections.
They are factual connections, yeah. Now, whether they're relevant to bias is the debate, but some people see them as potentially significant, in the context of these regional networks.
That does bring up a point, doesn't it? These local legal communities, I mean, how connected are they usually?
They can be very interconnected, especially in areas that aren't huge metropolitan centers. You get professional relationships, friendships, things that span, like, decades. And while it doesn't automatically mean bias, of course, it can definitely create that perception of bias, especially when you've got a case like this that's already under such a microscope.
Right. And there was that whole thing with the defense saying she had a close relationship with a prosecution witness. I think some source mentioned Auntie Bev.
That reference did surface, yeah. And the defense argued that connection, but Judge Cannone chose not to recuse herself.
Which naturally just fuels more questions about impartiality, doesn't it?
It does. And then other concerns came up about how she handled certain things during the proceedings.
Like what?
Well, there was this issue with the defense's expert witnesses. Allegations came up that they'd falsely denied getting paid. Judge Cannone expressed a grave concern about that, and it actually led to a hearing being suspended for a bit.
Okay.
And there was also disagreement with the defense lawyers about how the verdict slip should be structured. The forms the jury fills out.
Verdict slips.
Yeah.
Why is this structure such a big deal? Especially, I think you mentioned, with lesser charges.
Yeah, so if a jury could find someone guilty of a less serious crime, instead of the main charge that's a lesser included offense, the way the slip is laid out can sort of guide how they think about those options.
Okay. Like the order they consider things.
Exactly. It can potentially influence the deliberation process and, ultimately the outcome. It's a procedural point, but it can have real consequences.
Gotcha. And then there was the gag order she issued.
Right. Preventing the lawyers from talking about the case publicly outside of court.
The official reason was, what, ensuring a fair trial?
That's the standard justification, yeah. To avoid tainting the jury pool and keep the process fair.
But the defense saw it differently.
Well, the defense, and some commentators too, felt it kind of restricted their ability to share information they thought was really crucial for the public, or even for countering the prosecution's narrative.
It's a tricky balance, I guess.
It always is in these high-profile cases. Transparency versus potential prejudice.
Okay, what else? She denied some defense requests too, didn't she?
Yes, several. One was denying their request to bring in another lawyer, Mark Betterow. He represents Turtle Boy, the blogger.
Ah, right. He's been covering this case intensely.
Very intensely. The judge cited a potential conflict of interest there. She also said no to polling the jurors after the mistrial was declared, denied motions to dismiss some of the charges, and, importantly, denied requests to let the defense inspect certain key pieces of forensic evidence.
Denied inspection. That seems significant.
It's certainly something the defense has emphasized, and according to this Judicial Complaint and Defense Strategy report that's out there, they claim she basically just ignored key defense motions.
Ignored them. How so?
Well, motions challenging what they called procedural misconduct, like errors in how things were done legally, and also challenging inconsistencies they saw in the forensic evidence.
Right.
And they also alleged she kind of brushed off inconsistencies in the testimony of Jennifer McCabe, who's a really key witness for the prosecution.
Has we seen anything from, like, court transcripts that shows this bias directly? I know some days were mentioned, day 22, day 31.
So those transcripts show Judge Cannon presiding, making rulings, managing the courtroom. You see her in action, but do they, like, inherently demonstrate bias just from those excerpts? Probably not definitively, no.
But they show her making these contested rulings.
Exactly. They document the decisions being made. And separate from the transcripts, there was a news report highlighting her concern about the defense paying potential witnesses, so she was definitely watching the money side of things, too.
And the defense also pointed to issues with other witnesses, right? The Alberts.
Yeah, they argued there were major inconsistencies in statements from Brian and Colin Albert, stuff they believe could really damage the credibility of the prosecution's case.
And the biggest one, maybe, is the FBI analysis about Jennifer McCabe's phone search.
That's a huge point for the defense, yes. They claim an FBI forensic analysis confirmed she searched for how long to die in cold much earlier than she testified to.
Which would directly contradict her sworn testimony.
Precisely. So if you put all these pieces together, the alleged connections, the rulings on evidence and witnesses, the gag order, the handling of motions.
From the defense's viewpoint, it built a case raising, well, pretty serious questions about whether Judge Cannone could be truly impartial.
That's the core of their argument regarding potential judicial bias, yeah. They feel it potentially impacts the overall fairness.
Okay, let's shift gears then. What about law enforcement conduct? Trooper Michael Proctor seems central here.
He absolutely is. And Karen Reed herself has made claims, right? Saying she felt like state police were following her.
Yeah, she said it got so bad that drivers, like delivery drivers or Ubers maybe, refused to come to her house.
And she also claimed that even her friends had their phone records subpoenaed. Part of an investigation that, at least at that time, didn't lead to any charges against them.
So the feeling she described was definitely one of, like, harassment.
That's the picture painted, yes. Serious claims about how law enforcement power was being used.
And then the defense layers on specific allegations about Trooper Proctor himself, these ties to the Albert family.
Right, very specific allegations. That his mother considered the Alberts like a second family. That Proctor himself was in Colin Albert's wedding party.
Not just attended, but was in the wedding party. Like at the head table.
That's the claim, yeah. Seated at the head table. Which, suggests a much closer relationship than just being casual acquaintances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if he's the lead investigator.
It immediately raises questions about objectivity, doesn't it? How impartial can you be investigating people you have that kind of close personal history with?
That's the million-dollar question.
And the defense argues, well, of course, that these ties could have influenced how he ran the investigation, what evidence he focused on, how he interpreted things.
And the allegations don't stop at just potential bias. They accuse him of actually planting evidence.
Yes, that's a major, major accusation. The taillight pieces are key here.
Okay, what's the issue with the taillight?
The defense says there was another officer, an independent one, who saw Karen's SUV before Proctor really had access to it. And this officer noted the taillight was cracked, but not, like, shattered or missing big pieces.
Okay, so damaged but not severely.
That's their claim. Then they allege Proctor later messed with the official records about when exactly the police took possession of the SUV.
Why would the timing matter so much?
Because if the damage was less severe before Proctor got involved, and worse after, it opens up the possibility that those more significant pieces of taillight found later.
Well, that they were introduced somehow.
Planted, essentially.
That's the implication the defense is making, yes.
And there was also something about glass on her bumper.
Right. Another piece of contested evidence. The defense claims Proctor was the only one who had access to glass fragments that would match whatever was found.
But is there another explanation for that glass? Well, we did see one source suggesting that the plow lights on Higgins' Jeep, another vehicle potentially involved or near the scene, are made of quartz glass. So that could be an alternative source. You have to weigh that too.
Okay, so conflicting possibilities there. What else about Proctor?
The accusations get broader. Claims he tried to hide witnesses, even that he falsified affidavits. Those are sworn statements for court.
Falsifying affidavits. That's obstruction of justice territory, isn't it?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Very serious allegations. And then there are his own text messages that came out.
Ah, yes. Those were pretty bad, weren't they?
They revealed a pretty clear bias against Karen Reed, using derogatory language, and crucially, he admitted in those texts to looking through her phone without permission, specifically trying to find nude photos.
Wow, okay. That's not good for an investigator's credibility.
Not at all. And it culminated eventually in him being found guilty by a state police trial board.
Guilty of what, exactly?
Multiple specifications across 2 charges, all related to his conduct during this homicide investigation. So it's an official finding of misconduct by the department itself.
What does that finding mean for the case itself, potentially?
Well, when your lead investigator is found to have committed misconduct related to the investigation, it casts a shadow, doesn't it? It raises serious questions about the integrity of the whole process and the reliability of the evidence he gathered or handled.
It certainly gives the defense a lot of ammunition.
Oh, absolutely. Grounds to challenge evidence, challenge the conclusions drawn.
And the timing of when he was actually fired. That raised eyebrows too, right? It was much later.
It was March 2025. That was after the mistrial, after public scrutiny had really intensified on him in the investigation.
So people started wondering, was this just a reaction to the public outcry?
That's the speculation, yeah. Was it maybe an attempt to kind of contain the damage, protect the institution, maybe protect others involved, sort of positioning Proctor as the fall guy?
A way for the DA's office to distance themselves.
Possibly. By firing him after the mistrial, they can say, look, we took action based on the misconduct findings, which gives them maybe a degree of plausible deniability about whether they knew or approved of his actions earlier, while still sticking to their main case against Reed.
It's all very tangled. Were other officers questioned too?
Yes, the conduct of others has also been scrutinized. There are allegations about Detective Sergeant Lank, for instance.
What about him?
Claims that his testimony to the grand jury misrepresented things Karen Reed said, and also that he didn't disclose his own relationship with the Albert family.
Misleading a grand jury. Also very serious.
Absolutely. It potentially undermines the whole basis for the indictment if key information was misrepresented or withheld.
And even the prosecutor, ADA Lally.
Allegations there, too. The defense claims ADA Lally knowingly brought in what they call baseless expert opinion about motor vehicle homicide.
Baseless how?
Like, not properly supported by evidence or standard practice. And also that Lally presented Red as a suspect very early on, maybe even before crucial forensic analysis, like on her phone, was even finished.
Suggesting they maybe jumped to conclusions.
That's the defense's argument, that it was premature based on incomplete information.
And is there any history here? I think there was a mention of another case involving Detective Lank.
Yes, a past case called Lopeil v. Lank. It involved allegations of assault and battery against Lank and the Canton Police Department more broadly.
So not the first time allegations of misconduct has surfaced involving someone from that department.
Correct. It suggests, or at least points to, a history where allegations of misconduct have been made against personnel within the department, including one of the investigators in this case.
So summing up the law enforcement side, it's a lot.
It is. From the defense perspective, it paints this really concerning picture. Potential bias due to personal connections, alleged evidence tampering, withholding information, potential lack of transparency.
All things that could seriously undermine the investigation and the case.
Definitely raises questions about the pursuit of justice in this specific instance.
Okay, now, we need to talk about some of the let's say, less conventional interpretations that have come up around this case.
Right. And we should be clear, some of our sources here are things like tarot card readings.
Tarot cards?
Really? Yeah. And these offer, very subjective takes. They're not substantiated claims in a legal or factual sense. They talk about people involved: Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, using informal language, even nicknames like Auntie Bev again or Chubby Fingers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So why do you think things like tarot readings even enter the conversation in a legal case?
Well, I think in cases that are really high profile, really confusing, where the official story feels incomplete or maybe unbelievable to some, people look for other ways to make sense of it.
Like filling in the gaps.
Sort of. Or exploring different possibilities, assigning meaning when the usual explanations just don't seem to fit for them. It can range from, citizen journalists digging online to these more esoteric approaches.
Okay. So what are some of these specific unconventional ideas related to the Red case?
One really specific one revolves around something called Box 1981 at the Norfolk Superior Courthouse.
Box 1981. What is that supposed to be?
In these interpretations, it's described as a, quote, frequency lock, or a karmic vault.
A frequency lock, okay.
The theory is that it was deliberately created, energetically speaking, to bind and hide information, specifically information related to what they call a containment spell from 1981.
A containment spell, what's that supposed to contain?
The idea, as presented in these sources, is that it was meant to suppress the full story or integration of things like MKUltra, legal reprogramming techniques, media control stuff, especially in the years right after those programs were supposedly peaking.
MKUltra, so linking it to those old CIA theories.
That's the connection being made, yeah. And it's tied to this idea of a suspicious archival gap they perceive in records from around 1978 to 1981, and alleged patterns of expungement, like records being deliberately wiped.
To hide what exactly?
What they call a full system install, like a hidden programming being implemented across society systems. Legal, psychiatric, media, even military.
That is quite a theory. Very elaborate.
It is very complex. And it weaves in this story of a woman named Aloria Thorne.
Who is she?
Supposedly a clerk who worked at that courthouse years ago. The story goes she reported some kind of wrongdoing, was silenced, maybe even buried in some sense metaphorically or perhaps energetically.
And her trauma is connected to the building.
That's the idea, that her trauma is sort of energetically coded into the courthouse itself, and some believe that just speaking her name, like with recognition and intent, acts as a kind of master code.
A code to do what?
To break what they call a Saturnian loop that's affecting the courthouse.
Okay, wait. Saturnian loop. What on earth does that mean?
So this concept in these interpretations involves things like chronobonding, which sounds like being bound through time, judgment being used as a false authority, material things in the building, like stone or lead, acting as anchors for this energy.
Anchors for negative energy.
That seems to be the idea. Also, ritualized paperwork, court documents, even Box 1981 itself having energetic significance. Astrological timing being important, and just a general feeling, a perceived energy around the courthouse that's dense, cold, maybe controlling.
And this gets linked to even darker stuff.
Some interpretations do, yeah. They connect this Saturnian concept to alleged satanic ritual abuse, soul trafficking ideas, and this concept of inverting a natural or divine order. Really extreme claims.
So, if people believe this is happening energetically, are they trying to do anything about it?
Yes, these sources talk about energetic clearing rituals being performed at the courthouse.
Like what kind of rituals?
Things described include energetically establishing a light-sealed fortress around the place, trying to release spirits believed to be trapped there. They mention Aloria, someone named Silas, Ezekiel, others.
Releasing spirits, okay.
Also blessing a specific tree on the courthouse grounds, opening something called a street burial portal.
The street burial portal, what's that supposed to be?
It sounds like a belief that there were hidden or unacknowledged deaths connected to the location, creating an energetic issue that needs resolving. And of course, energetically unlocking that box, 1981.
This goes way beyond the courthouse building too, right?
Yeah.
Think about Canton itself.
Yeah, the idea of ritual architecture.
Yeah.
That certain properties in the town of Canton might have been specifically designed or maybe repurposed to imprint trauma or run this kind of programming, like points on an alleged MKUltra grid.
An MKUltra grid in Canton. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so how does all this energetic ritualistic stuff, how do they connect it back to Karen Read's actual case?
Some people draw parallels. They see the Karen Read case as echoing older historical cases, most notably Sacco and Vanzetti.
Sacco and Vanzetti. Okay, that was another controversial Massachusetts case, right?
Exactly. They see Judge Webster Thayer from that case as maybe a modern echo in Judge Cannone. The connecting theme is this idea of a flawed justice system, maybe influenced by societal prejudice, or, in these interpretations, maybe even by these unseen energetic forces.
Can you just quickly remind us, Sacco and Vanzetti, what was the core issue there?
Sure. Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, Italian immigrants, anarchists, convicted in 1921 for an armed robbery and murder in Braintree, Massachusetts that happened in 1920.
And this was during the Red Scare.
Right. Huge anti-immigrant, anti-radical sentiment. Many felt the evidence against them was really weak. The judge was biased. They were executed in 1927 despite massive international protests.
And it's seen as a major miscarriage of justice.
A classic example, yes. Decades later, the Massachusetts governor even issued a proclamation saying their trial was unfair. It really damaged perceptions of American justice for a long time.
So the idea linking it to Karen Read is what? Like history repeating itself.
Kind of. These interpretations talk about karmic echo cycles. They might see Karen Read as fitting an archetype, someone telling an inconvenient truth, maybe being framed, similar to how Sacco and Vanzetti's supporters saw them.
And figures on the other side, like Proctor.
They might be seen as echoes of those who maybe manipulated evidence or suppressed the truth in the Sacco and Vanzetti case. It's about seeing patterns and archetypes across time.
And the goal of all the energetic clearing work you mentioned. It's more than just about the court case.
According to these sources, yes. A big part of it is about reclaiming what they call a divine inheritance.
Divine inheritance. Meaning what? Like spiritual enlightenment?
It seems to encompass energetic gifts, but also things like ancestral land rights, even potential, like, physical or monetary compensation, things they believe have been blocked or stolen due to these historical and energetic issues, which the clearing work is meant to rectify.
So it connects the legal, the historical, the spiritual, the energetic, all together.
It's a very holistic, though highly unconventional way of viewing the whole situation.
Okay. So wrapping this deep dive up, we've covered a lot. We looked at these really serious allegations of bias against Judge Cannone.
Scrutinizing her rulings and connections.
Then we dug into the conduct of Trooper Proctor and other law enforcement figures, the misconduct findings, the allegations of evidence issues, bias.
Yeah, serious questions raised about the integrity of the investigation from the defense side.
And then we explored these much more unconventional interpretations, tarot cards, energetic spells, Box 1981, karmic echoes.
Ideas suggesting hidden influences, maybe even supernatural or energetic ones, potentially at play.
So what does this all mean? I mean, it really forces you to think about how complex seeking justice can be, doesn't it?
It really does. We've seen potential human flaws and biases within the legal system itself. And then you have these other interpretations suggesting forces maybe beyond the tangible. It definitely broadens the scope of what people are considering in this case.
It does. So maybe a final thought for you listening. In a case like this, with so many totally different stories, conflicting narratives, interpretations ranging from the purely legal to the, well, deeply esoteric, how do you even begin to figure out what you think the truth is?
Yeah, and what responsibility do we have maybe to look beyond just the official version of events, to consider all these different angles, even the ones that seem, well, pretty far out there?
It's definitely a lot to mull over.